Okay, the Cleveland Browns are up next. They finished third place in the AFC North, and they had the 10th pick in the 2020 draft in the first round, in which they selected Jedrick Willis, tackle from Alabama. I gave it an A. I mean, it's no doubt a need. I think a lot of positive things have been said about Willis, and yeah, though I wouldn't say he's without flaws. He has poor recognition against the blitz and sometimes goes overboard on extending and going out in both the run and pass protection. So over time, I think, with experience and more challenge, I think he could become better. He'll probably develop nicely and eventually become a pretty good starting tackle, not only in the league but for the Browns. So overall, I gave it an A. It's a need, and I think they drafted a talented player with good potential. With their second round, 44th overall pick, they drafted Grant Delpit, safety out of LSU. I gave it a B. Delpit didn't really excite in 2019 the way he did in 2018. So I think some of the inconsistencies showed out in 2019, which led to a less impressive year. I would say Delpit occasionally he over pursues and has very inconsistent tackling techniques and angles to the ball carrier. His coverage ability can be spotty sometimes, and his range as a deep safety is just okay. So overall, I think Delpit's a solid football player, but I still think some of his coverage skills for sure, and also his tackling skills, need to become more perfected or more sharpened, fine-tuned to the NFL skill level. And so while I don't expect that any Jamal Adams play out of him, I do think he could be more of an Eric Reed type of safety. He could be just a solid guy back there, and it's a need, which is why I gave it a B for Grant Delpit. So with their third round, 88th overall pick, they drafted Jordan Elliott, defensive tackle out of Missouri. I gave it an A-. Elliott is at defensive tackle. It's a need. And he's definitely a guy that could come in year one, start, and be productive. He's a very good gap or line stuffer in the middle there. So he could be good on 3-4. Pass rushing, not as good, but I think he could develop that over time, and his skills and techniques probably need to become better in that department. But hey, Myles Garrett is there, so nothing's eliminated for him. I think he could develop. But I think the biggest problem for Elliott is his lack of drive while playing, which kind of led to, some games are better than others and more inconsistent play. So I think, you fix the motor and the competitiveness, the drive, the motivation, and fine-tune some of his skills, and he could be decent. It's a need. And they got a talented player that needs a little bit of motivation. So Jordan Elliott out of Missouri, I gave it an A-. So not a bad pick. With their third round, 97th overall pick, they drafted Jacob Phillips, linebacker out of LSU. I gave this one a C+ because it is a need, but I don't think Phillips is going to be the guy. He's more of a silent, keep-to-himself guy. Athletically speaking, he is behind when you talk about NFL linebackers. So I think he's going to have a hard time. But I think, he could be a rotational piece. He could be a backup. I just don't see him being a starter or a force. While you're still in the third round, you're still looking for somebody you think that can have an impact. But I think he's going to be more of a backup or rotational piece for Cleveland. Not going to come in and fill that starting role for them. So with their fourth round, 115th pick, they drafted Harrison Bryant, tight end out of Florida Atlantic. Not sure if it's a need, but he was one of the better available guys. That's why I gave it a B+. I think he could be very good, and this is probably why David Njoku wants a trade, because they got Hooper and now this guy. So I think even if Njoku goes, they'll be all right. I think he's a great all-around tight end. He could catch, he could run, he could pass block, and he runs pretty good routes too. So Harrison Bryant, tight end out of Florida Atlantic, I think it's a good pick. B+ is what I gave it. Only reasons it's not an A, not necessarily it wasn't a need. I still don't think it's a need. But he was very good, and he slipped to the 4th round. He was projected 3rd. So, good pick. With their 5th round, 160th overall pick, it was Nick Harris, center out of Washington. I gave this one a C. Again, this was another need, but they didn't get the guy who's going to fill that need. I just think overall, when you look at Harris, I think he lacks the athleticism, the strength, the skill, the technique, and the penalty discipline it takes to be a starting lineman in the NFL. The only positive thing I can say about him is his motor, his drive, that plays hard all the time. But I just don't think that's going to be enough for him. And with their last pick, 6th round, 187th overall, they picked Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver out of Michigan. I gave it a C+. At 6'2", 212, Jones is an imposing figure for a wide receiver. And when he was healthy at Michigan, he played well. He's return man abilities. And I think he could be a number 3 and number 4 wide receiver in the NFL. The thing that frustrated me watching him at Michigan is I feel like he made some drops, the catches that should have been caught. And I think effort is sometimes a problem with him. And I don't know why, but it just seemed to be a problem sometimes. And obviously, he didn't necessarily miss games, but he had like lingering injuries, didn't allow him to play at 100%, or he'd be in and out of games. So he is a little bit injury prone, but it's just like the small nagging injuries, which maybe it's not a lack of effort. Maybe he was just playing through pain and not very good at doing it. So overall, I gave that pick a C+. I mean, OBJ and Jarvis Landry are there, so he could develop. But overall for the Browns, I gave him a C+, which was last place in their division. I think they had an interesting class. They drafted a few, good pieces. I don't think they got any for sure home runs. But they got a lot of developmental pieces that if they pan out, they could be pretty good. I don't think they got many guys where you're looking in 3-5 years saying, oh, he's a Pro Bowl starter. But they filled some holes, filled some needs, and they got some sound players. So overall, I gave it a C+. It was nothing special, but it was not that bad. So C+ for the Browns is what they get. And coming up next is the Pittsburgh Steelers draft analysis. So we'll find out how they did in their 2020 draft. Stay tuned.